Child abuse and the woke mind virus. Let's get dialed in. If you're a parent, imagine for a moment your worst fears being realized, that your child is in danger, facing abuse. Then imagine the abuser is your own ex-husband or ex-wife. How would you feel if your ex-husband or wife insisted that your 2-year-old little boy is actually a little girl, and then made the cold, calculated decision to indoctrinate him with that delusion? Despite your strongest protestations, your children are then stripped away from you and hauled off to the woke cesspool called California, where their other so-called parent is able to continue indulging her own fantasies that your son is not a boy. You fear chemical castration, or even worse, irreversible gender mutilation well before your young child has reached the age of reason. You appeal to the courts for intervention, and they offer no recourse. You even move to California yourself, but your supervised visitation requires you to see your son wearing dresses, and you're instructed to feed into the brainwashing by addressing him as if he were a she. This is not a page from a work of fiction or a scene from some Hollywood drama. Folks, this is real life. This is the disturbing, heart-wrenching, and horrifying story of a man called Jeff Younger, who has faced this for the past several years. If it can happen to him, then it can happen to any of us. His story must be told to ensure we take every single necessary step to prevent any parent from ever having to endure what this man and his sons have been through. Joining me now is former candidate for Texas State House and father of two, Jeff Younger. Jeff, welcome to Texas Talkin.
Howdy, glad to be here.
I'm glad you came, and I wish it were under better circumstances. Jeff, I invited you on to this show after I saw a post from you earlier this week indicating that you've moved back to Texas from California and have essentially done all you can for your sons. As a father of two myself, my heart breaks for you. And I want to know, Jeff, what happened while you were in California?
Well, the same corruption that I saw in the Texas 301st District Court is just happening again in the LA Superior Court. One example that really just hit home with me was, I orally recused my judge. He refused to recuse himself. He has that right. Once he refuses to orally recuse himself in California, I have a right to a hearing from another judge. Somebody, usually a judge out of the county is the typical protocol, to determine whether he should be disqualified. I went up to the appellate court because my judge refused to stop ruling in my case while this was going on. The appellate court just said, you have no right to appellate relief, and just left it at that. They didn't say why, they didn't say anything. And basically what's going on is just like when I was in Dallas County, the message has gone out to all the judges that you're going to rule a certain way, and there's an outcome we want in this case, and we're going to get it no matter what.
That is tragic. Jeff, in reading about your story, and I'm familiar with what's happened to date, I don't really know any other way other than to candidly say it. Your ex-wife is clearly unstable, because only a mentally ill person or an evil person would abuse a child by brainwashing him with gender confusion. How far has she gone with this delusion to date?
Man, it's so bad. I'm going to try to, let me see how I can say this, because it's a family show. My son has had discussions with his mom and so-called medical care providers about removing his own genitalia. They have told my son that they can harvest sperm from his removed testicles so that he can have a baby later as a woman. These are the things that they're telling my son. And it's just got to that level.
So at this point, he's 9 years old, correct?
12 years
He's
old.
12 years old now.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this has been going on since he was 2 years old, from
two
what I
years old. She
understand.
started when he was 2. That's what prompted our divorce.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It would certainly prompt a divorce with me as well. And I can't imagine that kind of horrifying reality as a parent where you have who you think is your partner, your wife, someone you love, who is brainwashing and indoctrinating one of your own children into believing that they're something they're not. And the child, of course, isn't fully developed cognitively, so they buy into it.
My son just straight up told me, I asked him, because the thing is, he's never presented as a girl to me. See, with me, he's always presented as a boy. And you would think the courts would give him a chance at a normal life by letting him be with me, but they've always given the boys to her. He just told me very flatly one time that his mother doesn't love him unless he's a girl. That's why he dresses up like a girl. He just wants his mom to love him.
It's such a sad story, and I wish that there was a happier outcome here. But what we can do, and you and I are Texans, and so we can influence what happens here in Texas. I don't think that we have any sway at all in California. I think that state is so far gone, it may be irredeemable. But we are in Texas. We should be leading conservative movements in Texas. And so I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask you, Jeff, how have the Texas courts failed us here? And more importantly than that, what could have been done differently?
So there's a couple of things. The Texas courts over rely on psychology professionals. Basically, in Texas, we have no fault divorce, and they assign what's called a custody evaluator, which is a status in family law in Texas. And it's a psychologist, and he's the one that determines what the custody arrangements ought to be, and the judges just do it, right? It's a way for the judge to say there was expert testimony on what they should do, and it absolves the judge of all responsibility. In my case, there were just blatant lying going on. So the custody evaluator in my divorce was a guy named Blake Mitchell, who practices out of Frisco, Texas. He works in Collin County courts, Dallas County courts, Tarrant County courts, and Denton County courts. And this liar actually said that my ex-wife was not trying to transition my son, and that I had lied to the court saying that she was trying to, and on that basis recommended that she have sole custody of the children. And I got less than standard possession time. So one of the big problems we have is an over reliance on psychologists rather than fact finding in the court. That's one of the biggest problems we have. Second is we have a problem where there's still simply an enduring bias against fathers in these courts. We've looked at the statistics. We've done Freedom of Information Act and public records request from the Texas Attorney General's office. 94% of the time, fathers are getting 8 days a month with their kids. So, and here's the thing. If you don't have at least 45% of the time with your kid is raised in a single parent home with all the problems that leads to. And if you look at all of our social problems, almost all of them come from fatherlessness.
Yes. Yes.
Kids don't graduate high school. They don't go to college. Criminality is much higher. Drug use is much higher. And it's all because of fatherlessness. And the third thing is and this is the real root cause of this, okay? This is kind of a little technical, but it's important for people to get. And we're conservatives, right? So we understand how government incentives can pervert the course of justice in a society.
Absolutely.
So there's a program called Title 4D, which gives reimbursements to the states for the collection of child support. Texas gets about $500 million. Let me repeat that.
Half a
Texas
billion?
gets $500 million from the Title 4D program for the collection of child support.
Wow.
So what this means is the state gets paid when the father doesn't have equal time with his kids.
Because he has to pay child support.
Correct.
And the state gets its cut. It's almost like a racket. Well, it is a racket.
It is a racket. Now there's Title 4D is terrible, and it's the program responsible for pushing fathers out of homes in divorce. There is a program called Title 4E, which goes to CPS every time they adopt out a baby. When they adopt out a baby in CPS, they get $250,000 from the federal government. So they're what do? The budget gets low in one of the satellite CPS offices. They look for a healthy baby under 18 months, no medical problems, to low IQ and low income parents. They take that baby and they adopt it out, and they got their budget problem is solved. Okay. Then there's another, I got supervised visitation. Let me tell you why that is. There's a federal program that gives grant money directly to the county commissioner's court. It bypasses the state. That's why it's so popular in the courts. Every man that goes on to supervised visitation, the county gets between $30,000 and $40,000 in grant money to supervise that man. So, and those grants go out every year in October. So you'll see in the family courts, July and August and September, they'll put 10,000 men on supervised visitation, can't see their kids, so that they can get that $40,000. So there are massive federal incentives. The state of Texas, really, you're not, these are like the size of like defense programs. I'm smart enough to understand they're probably not going away, right? So here's what I think we need to do. When Title IV-D money comes into the state, or Title IV-E, or grants for supervised visitation, the money should never go to the agencies that issue these. So if you issue the child support, or you collect the child support, you don't get the money. In fact, I think the money should go straight into the rainy day fund, and no agency should get it.
Right, because then incentives aren't set up to make certain decisions.
Correct. And in fact, I had one of the things on my platform when I ran for office was that I was going to do half of that money, half of the Title IV-D money would go towards co-parenting classes and co-parenting training to get parents to accept 50-50 custody and equally share the raising of their children.
And that's how it should be. You and I both know that the best scenario for any child is, of course, to have both parents at home. But if that can't happen, to have a mother and a father an equal amount of the time. Jeff, your case went all the way up to the Texas Supreme Court, and unfortunately, the Texas Supreme Court offered no recourse. What happened there?
Well, it's just very simple. The Texas Supreme Court is captured by the liberal Texas establishment Republicans. And the liberal establishment Republicans are captured by the liberal Northeastern donor class that funds the Republican Party. And I name names on this.
Good.
Like a lot of people don't get this. The transgender movement was started by Republicans. It was not started by Democrats. The transgender movement was started by Paul Singer, who is the largest donor to the Republican Party. He started the Human Rights Campaign, the yellow equal sign, the one that got us gay marriage.
Yep.
That's Paul Singer, the largest donor to the Republican Party, one of the largest donors to Greg Abbott.
Okay. Is great. What's his name again?
Paul Singer.
Paul Singer. Okay.
He's a hedge fund billionaire in New York. And he's the largest donor to Texas politics as well.
I did not know that.
Yes. So let me let's talk about this, then I'll come back. This is really important for Republicans to get. The fundamental situation we're in is this. We have an extremely right-wing conservative electorate in Texas, and we have an extremely left-wing donor class.
Yes.
So if you're caught in the middle and you're Governor Abbott, or you're Dade Phelan, or you're the lieutenant governor, or you're a representative, how do you split the difference here? Here's how it works. Let's use a bill you're more familiar with. Perhaps let's use the abortion bill. Everybody thinks we outlawed abortion in Texas. We didn't. So here's how it works. They will pass a bill and they outlawed the surgical procedure for abortion. Doctors can't do it anymore, right? And they did that after all abortions are chemical, and they don't do surgical abortions anymore. They do them by pills now. So they come to the conservative electorate who is not well informed, and they say, see how conservative we are? We outlawed abortion. Then they go to their liberal donors in New York and they say, you see how we left those loopholes in there? They can still get those chemical abortions. You can still give us your money. That's what they do. They put loopholes in our bills. That's why our bills never have any effect. That's why we can pass a closed border bill. It never has any effect.
Has no teeth in it.
That's right. That's why. And that's what they want, because it lets them get the money from the donors and it lets them get the votes from the conservatives. And that's how it's played.
So, Jeff, just to draw things to a close, because I agree that we need to have involvement from the electorate, and we need an informed electorate. Part of what I do and my mission here on this show is to share truth and engage my viewers. So that being stated, what needs to happen legislatively to ensure that no parent ever has to endure what you've been through? And how can my viewers help you?
So there's a couple of things really simple. They took 3 sentences out of the transgender bill that I finally got passed in the state. Right? 3 sentences they took out that would have classified these procedures as felony child sexual abuse, which carries a life prison term in Texas. On first offense, you can get life. Right? That means you cannot take your kid out of Texas to get these procedures done. It's illegal to take your kid out of the state for the purposes of abusing them. You would just come back and go straight into a Texas prison where your ass belongs.
Amen, right? Brother.
So we need to classify these procedures as felony child abuse. That will remove discretion from judges. And any parent that advocates for these procedures for children or puts them on a road to these procedures will not be able to have custody of a child in the state of Texas. And that's how it needs to be done. That is the simplest and most direct way. But let me tell you something. You are going to face more opposition to that from Dade Phelan, that short little homosexual that runs the Texas House. That little jerk is going to fight you tooth and nail to prevent that from happening. He has a 100% approval rating from every single LGBT organization in America. Okay,
I'm not surprised to hear that.
That's why I don't actually know if he's gay, but I know this: the gays sure like him enough to make me wonder.
Oh, so they love him.
They love him. Yeah, so that guy's going to fight you tooth and nail. So one of the biggest things we could do for all of our problems is find out, why do guys like Dade Phelan keep getting elected? And I have an answer for that. And we need a strategy for this. So this is how it worked in my election. I'm sure it worked the same way in yours. It's the strategy the establishment always uses. It's the same one. And
character assassination.
Our conservative grassroots Republicans fall for it every time. It only had to happen for me once.
I fell for it on some level myself,
because I'd never run for office. And so
me neither.
I don't want it to happen again. So let me explain to them like what's happening. You can chime in on how it happened to you. So it's real simple. They got a liberal running for office. Now these liberals are picked because they're cardigan wearing guys who've never taken a punch. They got no calluses on their hand. They wouldn't know how to work a shovel any more than they would a woman. So they get these guys and they don't have anything, in their past. They've never had their back against the wall, nothing, right? They get these milquetoast fellas. And then you get some conservative, cow punch like me and you. And, I've been in a few fights. I've had my back up against the wall and done things I've had to apologize for. I've done some dumb, stupid things in the past. You know why? Because I'm a fighter and I'm a risk taker. And fighters and risk takers don't act like these milquetoast bureaucrats. And the problem we have is our electorate is very sensitive to moral issues.
Yes.
So what they'll do is they'll go after that fighter who undoubtedly has a path. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Marine Corps, they used to find me in the brig for inspection because I was in there for fighting. Guaranteed. Anytime there was a company inspection, I'd be in there for fighting. So my company commander just came and inspected me first, right there in the brig. So these kinds of things happen, and they'll split the Republican vote. They'll say, Jeff Younger, he's a fighter. He's violent. He's got a violent past. And that splits the Republican vote. So half of them vote for the milquetoast gay Republican that's running, and then half of them stick with the conservative. And then because we have open primaries, they'll bring in Democrats to make up the difference to get their guy elected.
Yep,
and
that's how Dade won in the runoff.
Always use. It's the same strategy. And the consulting firm they use to do this is Murphy NASCA in Austin, Texas. They run it all, and it's the same playbook. So we need to come up with a strategy to defeat that and we can get our conservative candidates elected. And frankly, we're going to need better voters. Our voters need to wise up. If you want a fighter, they have a past like a fighter, and you just better get used to that, right?
A little rough around the edges, imperfect, not free from sin, if you will.
That's right. And believe me, these bureaucrats are less free from sin. They're just given the appearance of it.
That's exactly right.
So it's like
they
our
put on
guys
a
need to wise
facade
up.
that's believable and that appeals to, as you said, the moral voters in our party. And we're
That's
moral
right.
voters.
That's right.
It's just these people who run proceed as if they're some kind of political Pharisee, where they're free from sin and yet they can
Sure.
point the finger at everybody else and say that's a bad guy.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Probably if I got the opportunity, I'm 60 years old. If I got the opportunity to scrap with 2 or 3 Antifa guys, I'd probably still do it. I mean, that's just, and I'm not gonna. I mean,
Where I'm at with it is give me a reason.
yeah, I mean, I'm just not. I'm just like that. And our guys just have to get over this stuff where what are we looking for? Are we looking for, a Sam Houston that fought a war? Or what are we looking for? A Bill Clinton statesman that stands up on a stage in a latex, one of them polyester suits with the wide lapels. Man, what exactly are we looking for here? We can't make mistakes like this, and our electorate needs to wise up. So I don't even think it's education. I think we need to change the attitudes of our electorate, and that means counter propagandizing against the other side.
Yes.
It's more than just education.
And we have some very loud, obnoxious people on X and on other social media platforms who present themselves as grassroots conservatives, and yet they do everything they can, sometimes subtly, to undermine the conservative grassroots movement in Texas.
Oh, it's the name of the game for these guys. First of all, you can always tell they leave loopholes in the laws, right? They'll tell you it's the most conservative session ever, and it took us
every time.
What it costs? What is that? 20 years to get constitutional carry in Texas, and they'll tell you that it's conservative. It's just very strange. I'll tell you another thing: we need to stop electing lawyers.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Because the Bar Association is okay. This is really important too. I'm glad that this came up. So if you look at like the medical board that regulates medicine, or the psychology board, it's half appointed, half elected. But the American Psychological Association, or the Texas Psychological Association, doesn't have special powers in the government. It's a private thing, and the board that's appointed has all the power. That is not true of the bar. The bar is a private organization invested with state power. And there's some very scary cases coming up in the federal court where the Bar Association in California has gotten sovereign immunity like a government organization.
Wow.
And it's a private organization. So the bar is a clique of power brokers. And if you elect a lawyer, they're not going against what the Bar Association wants, because their career would be ruined, and they could go to jail. I mean, the Bar Association has that power. So remember, prosecutors are in the Bar Association, right? You don't want to piss those guys off. So electing a lawyer is really one of the worst things you can do, because you're subjecting the votes of that office holder guaranteed to the approval of a private organization run for profit. And so that's another thing. Stop electing lawyers. Let's be honest. Is a lawyer a better negotiator than an old crafty farmer up in a panhandle?
Probably
I mean, those
not.
guys are better. Those guys they're better. They have better morals. They're smarter. They've read the Bible more. They're crafty negotiators and can make deals with people better than any lawyer you'll ever meet. You've been much better off getting a farmer, rancher, a guy who runs a welding business. These kinds of people would make great legislators, much better than a lawyer.
People who are representative of those they are elected to serve.
That's right.
Jeff, I believe this has been a very important interview. I want to thank you again for taking time to come on with us tonight. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you, Shilo.
Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.